Yeah. Interesting. So where do you see things going?
I think it's catching on. I mean, the thing that when I first, I spent a lot of time figuring out how do you build this thing, and then I'd go to these trade shows, industry conventions, all that kind of good stuff, and people would say, you're brilliant, you understand the problem better than anyone in the history of the world, and maybe in 4 years we'll have a budget for that, which is depressing. So, I began looking at it, and I think the real thing that's turning the corner is I realized the business value I'm adding is analytics, not back office function. What I'm adding is now you can see, you know, an entire agent, not just, the stuff he does in this system and the stuff he does in that system and so on. Bring it all together, and now you can see an entire agent's journey or an entire customer's journey, or maybe fraud, or maybe, you know, here's somebody we could market to, because it turns out our most, profitable customers are 53-year-old ex-railroad guys from the Pacific Northwest. Well, you can go to companies and buy 100 names just like that,
Yeah.
market to them, and now you're not just sending out a postcard to everybody in a zip code. You're actually being much more surgical in who you're chasing.
Yes.
So, and I'm not only making that up. I actually asked some of these companies that sell you names, would this work? Yeah, of course it would. Just tell us
Right.
what you want. We'll do 1,000 names. So it turns out that's real. I thought it was
Yeah.
just marketing.
The riches are in the niches. If you could segment
So
down.
yeah. So
So you said the agent product will be out next month?
that's the hope. Yeah, we were up against a fairly major roadblock in trying to build it. I thought it was going to be out last month, and then we tripped over this thing. Now we're fixing it. Now we're on the short strokes in terms of getting the product out the door. And I think, we've got 3 or 4 agencies that want to pilot it. And then at that point, assuming nobody dies, nobody gets arrested, then at that point I'll go into the market with it.
That's awesome. So is it essentially like a dashboard, kind of? So
It's a dashboard, but a little bit more than that. I mean, like I say, if you you can't predict exactly what your commissions are going to be this month, because you're selling new policies and your old policies are canceling, and you might not even know they canceled, right? So, but the best I can do is say, of your book of business, this is the stuff that's expiring this month, or renewing this month, more to the point. This is what your commission should be on that amount, and we also know your new business, so we'll throw that into the mix. I would expect a check from this carrier to be about that large. And then when the check comes in, we can then reconcile it back to the, policy by policy. I thought you were going to get $100 for this one. You got 90. Why do you suppose that is? Well, now let's figure it out. I can't tell you why they shortchanged you, but it happens.
Right.
right.
The first agency I was talking to, the guy says, I've probably got $100,000 in unpaid commissions at this point. I just want to find them. I don't expect to ever see them, but I want to know it. So hopefully I can give them the tools to do that.